recovery. Yes, we're learning about narcissism. Yes, we're learning about the trauma that you've been through. But what I really focus on in helping people repair their life, it's the journey to self-love. Because where self-love is, narcissistic abuse cannot exist. Different energies.
That makes a lot of sense, People, I think, generally have problems with self-love. They're into depression, they're into guilt, they're into, self-destruction, they're into other abuses, alcohol and drugs to help reduce the pain and things like that. That makes a heck of a lot of sense. So you're opening a door to self-love. That seems to me that would be like the magic bullet, the injection that would get that person who is broken, first of all, give them some direction, give them some insight, and then learn to forgive themselves, would they be? Or how do they, approach that self-love? How do you help them approach that self-love?
Well, the way that I have it's a 1-year curriculum, and we have weekly classes that take place in a live classroom. And the way that I structure the program is there's 6 modules in the program, and I explain that self-love looks like a boardwalk in that there are many planks that make the boardwalk strong. If we have just one plank in our foundation, that we're going to walk like a tightrope in life. But the more planks that we have under our emotional legs, we're going to be able to dance and prance in life. And so every week when people come into the class, we're laying down a new plank in our self-love foundation. And for example, a plank of self-love is a non-negotiable. Do you know what your non-negotiables are? A ground zero, which means that we all have the right to have a base, a strong ground zero in our lives. Reciprocity is something that people who operate in self-love, that we go into a relationship and we understand that healthy relationships have a give and a take. The right to our first voice. I mean, all of these are the different planks that as we lay them down in our foundation of self-love, when we lay those down and we begin to raise our vibration as a human being, we then disalign ourselves with narcissistic abuse. It's something that our emotional palate cannot, it doesn't crave anymore, it doesn't try to fix anymore, and we're just able to enter into our being, which is the only life that we ever have control over anyway.
Well, I kind of teach from your fingertips back. You have complete control. From your fingertips forward, you kind of have influence, so that's about it. But that's very interesting.
Good
I mean,
point.
put the planks down. I like that analogy. That's fantastic. It gives you a firm foundation. I guess one of those things just occurs to me to say that, okay, you can't yell at me anymore. If you yell at me, I'm going to leave the room or something. Is it as simple and basic as that to start putting those planks down?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, narcissists can't stand being told what to do, but
wow.
It is telling somebody. It's either sending the message, telling somebody, though they might not respect it, and taking the measures. It's not so much you can't yell at me anymore. It's setting the foundation that respect. I live with respect. Self-love is a place where there's respect in the communication. And if I expose myself to another human being, there's going to be that reciprocity in that respect. I will not raise my voice at you. You will not raise your voice at me. If you raise your voice at me, I'm out. That's my non-negotiable.
Right. That to me, that's a place to start, Okay, well, we have a caller standing by. The lady's been a friend of the show. She drops in. The number to call, my friend, is 718-766-4421. And we have a big something going on here, Paul.
Sounds like a bit of feedback.
There we go. Okay, Carol, you're on the air. Thanks, Paul. We're having a little much control. I'm going to mute you. Well, I can. Go ahead, Carol. Carol's from Chicago. Go ahead.
Carol from Chicago. Sorry. What I wanted to know is, are there more, what percentage of people are narcissists? And are there more males and females that are narcissists?
Hi, Carol. That's a really good question. Well, we don't really have a percentage of who is narcissism because, again, or who has the narcissism condition, because it's a spectrum disorder. So, like I said, that on a bad day, my horns could come out, and if I'm running a big project, I could respond in a way that is perhaps lacking empathy towards another person. That doesn't make me a narcissist, but that means that I had at that moment a narcissistic response in life. So it's difficult to say how many. Are there more men who are narcissists than women? The answer to that would be yes, and that's simply because more men tend to have power, and just the way our culture is raised with the power between men and women, that it is found in more men. But there are also a lot of narcissistic women out there, and there are so many men who don't understand what they're dealing with, because when you think of narcissism, you don't expect, the traditional definition and ideology of a woman to not have empathy and compassion. And so, but it's as equally traumatizing to a man as it is to a woman.
Here you go, Carol.
And I have one more. Now, are you familiar with Quentin Crisp? He was the foremost, I would say, in England, he was, you could call him the pioneer
definition
of homosexuality. And he was a narcissist. But he had to, in my opinion, he had to be that way in order to survive. But not in a way that he was hurting somebody, because they always hurt him. Are you familiar with Quentin? He did the movie called The Naked Civil Servant. I'm sorry.
Yes, right. I'm vaguely familiar, and that one of my girlfriends is doing. She did a big research on him and wanted to do a story about his life, but I'm not educated enough to respond whether or not he had narcissism or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, well, listen, thank you, Carol. That's a couple of good questions. We really appreciate your participating in the show tonight. Dr. Tracy, is there more to that answer?
I really put together.
Did I jump in too soon?
No. I just I think that I need to have the question more a little bit more clear. I heard about. Can you just repeat the question one more time?
What I was saying, getting to the fact that Quentin is his sister. And the question was, if you were familiar with him, do you think he was? But since you aren't.
Yeah, I'm not the thing about narcissism is that, in order to get a proper diagnosis, you have to really sit and know the person, because, again, it's on a spectrum disorder. So because I'm not overly familiar, I couldn't give a clear answer on that one.
Right.
And have you tried having the doing the meditation or breathing exercises or something? Have you ever tried that or considered that?
In my recovery program, when I believe it's our module 3, there is a condition that is specific to the trauma victim of narcissism. And most people have heard of PTSD, which happens after a traumatic event. When a person goes through narcissistic abuse, they have a condition that is called CPTSD. And there's a very specific recovery program, different than recovering from PTSD, that it's a little bit of a different avenue of recovery. And within that portion of our recovery program, I do have meditation as a method of healing.
Okay. Thank you, Carol. Thank you for some another enlightening questions, as usual. Thank you for being on the show tonight, Carol. Really appreciate it. Okay. Take care. Good night. Okay. The number to call is 718-766-4421. Paul, if we're up for a break just about now, the number to call is 718-766-4421. So far, the Munchkins are doing okay with you and I, Dr. Tracy. They're not getting too much feedback here. But Paul, if you want to take a break, we're all set.
The Douglas James Cottrell website is where you can learn much more about this amazing man and his journey through a lifetime of spiritual prophecy. The book Secrets of Life answers questions everyone has about the physical versus the spiritual world, why you are here in the world right now, karma, psychic abilities, reincarnation, prayer, and much more about universal laws. This book is essential for those who really desire to follow the path of the divine to soul perfection. Douglas has been chosen to provide you with a keen insight into the purpose of life's journey. Best-selling author Robert Appel says, "The least you can expect from Dr. Cottrell's work is that it will change your life." Go to DouglasJamesCottrell.com and click on Shop for Secrets of Life and all of his books and learning materials. Did you know that Dr. Douglas Cottrell has several other weekly channels where you can participate? Check out his Sunday International Spiritual Healing Service on Zoom, plus a Wednesday night Zoom community gathering. And you might also enjoy the Wake Up podcast exploring human consciousness, awareness, and intuition with Dr. Douglas and co-host Les Hubert. Just go to DouglasJamesCottrell.com and message us on the contact page to add your name to the Zoom links of your choice. The Global Village Radio Show has exciting guests coming your way. Dr. Paul Hanna, creating a pathway to radiant energy, balance, clarity, and living from your soul to transform your life. Nina Verkoian, often called the modern Buddha, explaining what everyone's primary life's mission is with meta-spirituality. Eli Koberly, author and explorer of dreams and symbology. Be with us as we continue to explore the spiritual path Friday nights on the Global Village. Welcome back to the Global Village with Dr. Douglas James Cottrell and tonight's guest, Dr. Tracy Kemble, who's dedicated her life to helping others recover from narcissistic abuse and has guided thousands of abused women to restore their sanity, power, freedom, and self-love with feminine energy. She's also the founder of the International Feminine Boss Society and Academy, an online and in-person learning center. Call in to tonight's show at area code 718-766-4421. That's 718-766-4421. Now, here's our Global Village host, Dr. Douglas James Cottrell.
Well, my friends, I hope you're enjoying the show as much as I am. I am learning a considerable amount of, understanding and about narcissistic people I've met over the years, and I have met quite a few. This is a wonderful interview I'm having with Dr. Tracy Kemble, and again, there is www.drtracy.tv. That's DRTRACY.TV. Just a quick note, next week's guest is going to be Eli Koberly, and he's going to be here talking about his book, War in the Hearts of Men. That's next week. That'll be March 31st at 9 p.m., and we'll be looking forward to investigating yet again another wonderful guest as they participate in our search for the noetic sciences and understanding the human consciousness, which has been my life work. Dr. Tracy, we have a few minutes left to go. I promised just to keep you up for an hour this morning, and you're holding up pretty good for, I guess it must be coming up to 4 o'clock in the morning over there. in lovely, wonderful, amazing Greece. Pardon?
So amazing Greece. We have not yet hit over to daylight savings, so we're going on. Let me see. We are actually. It is going on 4 o'clock in the morning. Yes.
Okay. Well, you're doing well. Very good. Oh, I hope, of course, we're not interrupting your beauty sleep. I mean, I have to say that. You are a gorgeous lady. Your website is absolutely amazing. I've never seen one put together with so many wonderful design. Because I'm a printer and I publish books. I look at the color and the shape and the design of things and get my editor mode going here. It's a beautiful website. Again, it's go have a look, everybody. You've earned it. It's beautiful. It's www.drtracy.tv. So in the few minutes that we have left, we'd like to sort of, in a summary, you have these different empowerments and programs. Would you like to talk a little bit about how you, what you offer? How about that? I know we've been talking all the way through this show. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So first off, the book that I just published, my most recent book, is called The Narctionary, and it is the Narcissistic Abuse Recovery Dictionary, because the world of its own has a language of its own. Mm-hmm. And through this book that I've been able to identify over 350 terms and words that deal with narcissism, narcissistic abuse trauma, narcissistic personality, as well as narcissistic recovery, the most important part of the journey. I've been in the recovery world for about 30 years, and I have an ongoing program. It's taught twice a week on the East Coast time and on the West Coast time. It's called Reclaiming Me, and it's the journey from narcissistic abuse trauma to self-love. And it's a year-long curriculum. It only costs $10 to attend the class per week. And there are 6 modules in the program, and it's a safe environment. It's actually an enjoyable environment. And when somebody goes through narcissistic trauma, you feel so isolated and alone, and you feel crazy, and you feel lost. And this is just a very safe community where you can get answers to the brain scramble that you have, and you can get tribe and community, and most important, healing from the trauma that you've experienced. And it's real. You know, the old saying, sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never harm me. It's not true. Sticks and stones can break your bones, and narcissistic abuse can cause the final blows that can kill a self-esteem.
I'm sure. Wow. I like the idea of the dictionary, because I've learned that you recounted the several terms have made perfect sense to me, the different types of narcissistic, I'll call it patterns, if you will, for my word. And we have another call on the line here before we let you go, if they're looking to ask you a question. But it's to me, words are power. And in the world I live in, if you say the right words, you reinforce yourself. And I would think that would be by talking to yourself, sort of in a self-therapeutic way. That would be putting down those planks to lay the foundation for self-love. I deserve a better life. I'm a good person. Things like that. Of course, that's very simplistic, but it sounds to me like when somebody comes to you, first of all, you're an expert. Second of all, you have gone through the situation of being abused, unfortunately. And I always think that people can learn esoterically, but the most important way is exponentially. So you are hands-on, so to speak, and I guess that makes you, I don't want to say an expert or somebody who certainly would have be able to relate to people walking into a circumstance or situation and coming to your organization and saying, help me. So, Paul, do we have, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I built the entire program based literally on my recovery journey. From the very first, the very first class in the program is called What Is This? And, because I walked into therapy and I'm like, well, what is wrong with me? And then when finally I started to get some answers, you have narcissism and narcissistic. What is this? what happened to me? That's the next module. And so I because I went through it, I think that it empowers me more to be able to really have the empathy that a person who's been traumatized needs to be able to heal.
Mm-hmm. Well, nothing like going through it yourself and from the grassroots up, as you say. I just listening to you recount the steps makes perfect sense to me. It's been an education for me tonight. When we've heard terms, a friend of mine, Jonathan Alderson's been on the show about autistic children and exploring the myth of autism. Likewise, yourself has, not that he was autistic, but he has, from before university, he started being involved with children. And over the years, he has, defined and by exploring the myth, he has uncovered the different procedures on how to relate to children. He's had some remarkable recoveries. But the one thing is that he cared, and he had a process where, like yourself being a groundbreaker or a pathfinder, you have to go through it. You have to have hands-on. There's no other way as far as I'm concerned. That's what I learned. All the things I do was hands-on. And people came along and showed up in my life. I'm sure you've had some mentors in your life as well.
Absolutely. I didn't do it alone. I when the student is ready, the teacher presents itself, and I have a strong. And the beautiful thing about narcissistic abuse recovery is that there are a lot of physical things you have to do. There's mental things you have to do, emotional things you have to do. But there's also a spiritual journey that you have to go through in order to really be able to cut those ties and heal the soul trauma that happens to you.
Well, is it kind of like moving out of codependency into being an individual, kind of for those people who feel like they don't want to take that step and be alone? It's pretty scary for people who have been in a codependency. I would kind of just occurs to me that might be what it's like. It's like open the door, go outside, get in the light.
Yeah. It's the dynamic between a narcissist. The only relationships that are sustainable in a narcissistic relationship is a narcissist with a self-deprecate, which would be a codependent, or a narcissist with a narcissist. And the narcissist with the narcissist, those relationships normally burn out because everybody's fighting for the mirror. But the narcissist and the self-deprecate, as you begin to heal that internal self-worth and visibility and value, and you raise that energetic level, that it breaks the co-addiction that the two sides of the coin keep each other attracted to each other. It's I always say that self-love is the only antidote to narcissistic abuse trauma, and the same with codependence is that when you heal the self-love, you can heal the cycle.
Well, we have a couple of callers here. If you feel like staying up just a little bit longer, sure. If you don't mind, we might take a couple of questions. Okay, Paul, who's next?
We've got Joe on the line from Montana.
Okay, welcome to the show, Joe. Do you have a question for Dr. Tracy?
I do. I wasn't listening to the show, but I took a look at your description page, and as I was telling the screener, it says there that she has the only cure for narcissistic abuse. So I would like to know, in a nutshell, what that is, because there are a number of relationship counselors, one in particular, who have blog talk shows, and they say they can cure narcissistic abuse. So I'd like to know what the...
Okay, I'm going to take that back with the word... Okay, Joe, because I'm an editor and a publisher, I'm going to take the word only back, and might have said something about perhaps one of the not the only one, but one of the many. or
well,
best known or something.
Maybe I misread it, but let me check.
No, it says right there. It says lead people to the only cure. I'm going to take that back. I'm going to take that back and say whoever wrote that, a little bit too much. I would have said if it was me, that would be something like one of the. Okay, so.
Yeah, one of the few. Okay, no problem then.
So, what's your question for the good doctor?
Well, okay, in a nutshell again, what the cure would be according to her philosophy or process.
Yeah,
Doctor?
so I don't know if you were, hello, I don't know if you were on at the beginning of the show, but I was explaining how narcissism is a spectrum disorder. And, we all need healthy narcissism in order to keep the good in and the bad out. And as narcissism goes on up the spectrum, it first goes into narcissistic tendencies, and then it merges on up to narcissistic personality disorder, then it merges on up to antisocial personality disorder known as sociopath and psychopath. On the opposite end of the spectrum is something that is called self-love deficiency disorder. And what I discovered within myself is I said one day, if I stop focusing on trying to fix or cure the narcissist, and I just looked at this thing called self-love deficiency disorder, and I just focused on healing that self-love deficiency disorder within myself, what would happen. And inevitably I found that the more that I focused on repairing that self-love within myself, it disaligned me from the same, it just disaligned me from narcissism, and it broke all the cycles that were keeping that co-addictive relationship alive.
Was that
Well, I'd have to agree that self-love, but what about the people who can't focus on themselves, that they're so traumatized that they can't rehabilitate themselves, and they're always in a cycle of being traumatized? Because people have always said, and I've always said, self-love would be the answer to just about anything. If you have self-respect, good self-worth, then you're really not going to sit around for anything, regardless of whether it's a relationship or bad colleagues or a bad boss. Because I myself, I don't have a lot of patience with people in a relationship that have, that display distinct uncooperative behavior. If we talk, we come to an agreement, or if we talk and can't come to an agreement, and the particular behavior continues, it's just a matter of hasta la vista, baby. To me,
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
This is a very common dynamic that my husband is a very type A personality, and he says, I could never do what you do, Tracy, because if somebody came to me with the same problem 3 times, I'd be like, I'm out. Go get yourself fixed. The thing about self-love is that self-love is an emotional muscle. And when you're talking about somebody who has never been raised in an environment where they have they've been taught what self-love is, it's like speaking Chinese to them. So it's literally coming in and learning a whole new language. What does this language look, feel, and sound like? It's a muscle. How do I use this muscle? How do I strengthen this muscle? And it's a process that when I take my clients through it, that you start from ground zero. What are we talking about with self-love? What does it look, feel, and sound like? How do we use this muscle? How do we continue to grow this muscle and make it the foundation of our life? One of my non-negotiables in life is self-love is a non-negotiable. And in order for a person to heal, they have to commit to that self-commitment.
How's that, Joe?
Well, it sounds like something. Well, yeah, I like that. I'm not in the health field, the relationship field, but I have talked to people over the years about relationships, and I've recommended boundaries as one way. I tell people I do not have the recipe for a long-lasting, healthy relationship, but I do have the recipe for not staying in a bad one, and boundaries is one of them.
And that's an act of self-love.
Well said.
Yeah, and that is one of the planks in the foundation of self-love is a boundary.
Yeah, and if you can burst through the trauma that people do have, because a lot of times people have trauma don't even realize that they have it because everything else is their fault, but never her fault or his fault. It's always their fault. So if they can find out and take responsibility for their own actions and without exacerbating the trauma, then I guess they would be on their way to self-love, self-respect, realizing the world isn't as dangerous as it may appear, and maybe be open to a healthy relationship. I would like that too.
Yeah, and this is where getting outside of yourself is really important. This is where, seeking counseling, one-to-one counseling, joining a support group where you can hear a new language, you can hear a new insight, you can see other people making steps in front of you that can kind of give you an example of what those bridge points in recovery look like.
Mm-hmm. Would the trust factor be the major goal for people who suffer trauma, who have been narcissistically abused, for them to trust the outside world? I would imagine that would be the very, very hard goal to accomplish, because it seems to me that a lot of people, even if you give them love, they're always expecting the other shoe to drop, so they sabotage it.
Yeah, well, that's where, self-trust is another plank in the foundation of self-love. You have to trust yourself. You have to trust your emotions. You have to trust your thoughts. You have to trust your decision-making skills. And again, that's why I go back to it's a muscle that you have to learn. And when you learn to start self-trusting, you can then trust yourself to say, this is a safe person to be with. Or if I'm with this person and suddenly I'm discovering that they have unhealthy skill sets, I'm out, and that all comes down to self-trust.
I have a recommendation. Again, I'm not in the health field, but I'd like to have your opinion on it. I have been in many conversations, as I said before, about relationships, and I've recommended once you think that you really want that other person to be in a relationship with, take out a piece of paper. Write down what you like about each other, what you dislike. Write down situations and scenarios that you think you might encounter, in the future relationship, to see how you would handle it. And to do that so that you can agree on what the boundaries are, on what the behavior patterns would be. And I recommend that because, to me, again, if a person agrees to something, but then doesn't do it, to me, I give a person 4 strikes, because 3 strikes you're out in baseball, 4 strikes you're out with me. So I recommend that. But again, I'm not in the health field. It's just somebody who's, lived life.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Joe. I appreciate your comment. We're keeping the good doctor up in the wee early hours in Greece. So she's just doing a little overtime. We have one more caller, I think, to take, and we'll let her go. So thanks for your comments today, Joe. Appreciate that.
Sure. Absolutely.
Okay. Take care. And that's Joe from Montana. Paul, we have one last caller. We have several people in the queue just listening. You're a fascinating interview, Dr. Tracy, here. We have people.
Thanks. I can take as many questions as you like, as long as we have the time. And just a really quick thing is that the book Narcissistic is located on Amazon if people are wondering where to get the book.
That's a good idea. I never thought about that. Again, we have one more caller here. I'm not sure if it's if I see a hand up here. Again, we're having we're having a little bit of munchkins here in the production. Paul's working very hard here, and we have Jack in the background as our engineer. So, if you got time for one more question, or do you want to go?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, go ahead, Paul. Roll the dice. Let's see if it works.
Well, actually, we've had a couple of, because of our glitches, people are
I see that
getting dropped.
Yeah, I see that.
But
okay.
What I thought I would do is just give a little paragraph of information about our guest next week, Eli Coberly. He's a world traveler and seeker of truth through adventure. At 17, he left his small Pacific Northwest town to fulfill his dream of becoming an Army paratrooper. And then at 20, he was honorably discharged, began his search for a new dream. His writing has taken him worldwide to explore a few of the bigger questions of our human existence. And his prophetic worldview combines military service, counterculture, the anthropology and archaeology of the world's religious symbols. So he's now a yoga therapist, and he's been a student of yoga for over a decade. When he isn't writing or practicing yoga, Eli can be found examining Tibetan Buddhist tradition, sitting in ceremony with Maya priests, and traveling through caves deep in the Belize jungle. That's something I'd like to do. As long as there are no snakes.
You're going to get a chance to ask him those questions next week. He'll be on. That's the 31st of the month. He'll be on next week at 9 p.m. Always nice to be able to talk to somebody who's done something that you've wanted to do, Paul. Very good. We have any more callers for tonight, or because I'm very mindful.
No, looks like we've got a lot of people listening on hold, but no one right at the moment on hold to talk.
Let's take a quick break and come on back with the replay of the information for Dr. Tracy. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back, everybody.
You think about you and your family's health every minute, every day, not just when sick. We believe healthcare should bring results and rejuvenate the body. That's why Dr. Douglas James Cottrell compiled some of his best tips from his readings into a book, The Complete New Age Health Guide, Volume 1. From nutrition, anti-aging, and skincare to serious disorders and diseases like autism, PTSD, and cancer. Find out more at DouglasJamesCottrellStore.com or buy a copy on Amazon today.
There's a Hope Conference coming to you. 2 days of spiritual enlightenment with personal interactions with Dr. Douglas James Cottrell, along with guest speakers in open forum lectures and workshops. Near-death experiences, angels, virtue healing, interpreting your dreams, the tree of life, the DNA of your soul. Those are just several of the topics covered in this all-new conference. There will be special hotel room rates at conference locations. The Hope Conference will leave you spiritually energized with new cutting-edge information. See details at hopeconferences.org and view the breakdown of conference curriculum. Plus, plenty of opportunities to mingle with fellow seekers who have a goal of making the world a better place for themselves and others. See hopeconferences.org. And we look forward to seeing you. You're listening to The Global Village with Dr. Douglas James Cottrell and tonight's guest, Dr. Tracy Kemble. Now let's go back to the show.
Well, again, I want to thank you very much, Dr. Tracy, for staying up in the wee hours and calling, talking to us all the way from Greece. We've had some interesting questions tonight. I've learned a lot. I really like the idea of that recovery dictionary. It makes sense to me personally that I can, understand people where before I would say, why would they do that? Why would they say that? Why would they think that? Why does somebody think they're so, the smartest person in the room? And all those questions that would kind of throw me off balance. But I think if people were to buy your book, and they can get it on Amazon, you said, and I can go, can they get it to your website? Do you do autograph on your book?
Gosh, yeah, I should come out for a book signing one of these times. It is available on Amazon.com, and that's the best and the easiest way to get it. It can ship actually worldwide in many places.
Okay. Well, it's been a pleasure. I want to thank you very much for being a wonderful guest on the show tonight. I've learned a lot. On behalf of our producer Paul and our engineer Jack in the background, and we've been fighting the munchkins here with some feedback and some other issues here. We have a whole new program called Stream Something or Other, and we look forward to everybody joining us here next week. Again, Dr. Tracy, it's been a pleasure. I want everybody to go to Dr. Tracy's website, www.drtracy.tv. You will be very impressed, and if you're in need, if you feel that you're being abused by someone who has or is a narcissistic abuser, this is the place to go. I don't know of anybody else, doctor, that actually provides such a service, and you've been doing this for a long time.
A long time, and all first-time guests are my guests for the class. You can get a complimentary class to come check us out, see who we are, see our methodology of healing, which is all about the journey to self-love. And we're waiting for you. If you need that tribe, that support, those answers to, if your brain is feeling discombobulated, we can bring clarity. We can bring name to the ghost of narcissistic abuse.
Well said. I want to thank everybody for being on the show tonight. I'm Douglas James Cottrell. My special guest has been Dr. Tracy Kemble. We'll say goodnight, and we'll see you right back here next week. Take care, and God bless.
Thanks for listening to the Global Village Online Radio Show with your host, Dr. Douglas James Cottrell, and co-host Doug Bentley. Brought to you by MindPro Publications and Productions, a division of Douglas James Cottrell and Associates Incorporated. Copyright 2023, Douglas James Cottrell. No part of this broadcast audio may be reproduced in whole or in part without expressed written permission.